So after the little incident on the Pound for Pound podcast where Sugar Sean O'Malley would utterly embarrass Henry Cejudo, which would cause him to rage out and basically demand that once Sean loses to Marab, he gets him next. This was just hilarious, and it made me want to go back and take a closer look and just do a little retrospective on Henry's entire career, because it seems that a lot of MMA fans just disrespect the fuck out of Henry, like way too much nowadays. And yeah, I'm going to be critiquing him and praising him in this video. It's just a retrospective. I don't hate Henry. I actually think he's very overhated. And after going back and looking at a lot of his big fights, rewatching them, it seems that there's no way around it. A lot of his big wins do unfortunately have pretty big asterisks next to them, as in flaws in the performances, controversies, whatever it will be, bad weight cuts, whatever it is. It just seems like people have a reason to discredit every single win this guy has, and I'm here to just disagree or agree with some of that. And I also just thought it was a good idea because he probably will be retiring after his next loss. Like, I ain't saying he can't get a win. He's only on a 2-loss streak, but I think if he loses again, he'll just call it quits, because at this point, you're just destroying your legacy. And it's unfortunate because a lot of newer fans all they've seen is his Aljo and Marab fight. That's all they've seen, because this dude just retired in 2020, and I mean, obviously, he was never a real big star or anything, so yeah, he just keeps getting disrespected by a lot of new fans I've seen, and it's definitely not justified. Now, obviously, you can hate on Henry's personality. I'm not saying that. This dude is cringe as fuck. I mean, he claims it, though. He's the king of cringe, I guess. Triple C, yeah. I don't know. He's not good on the mic. I agree. But this dude put on a lot of insanely entertaining fights and has some of the most entertaining finishes at bantamweight ever. He does. He has probably the best finishes at bantamweight ever. Not performances, but finishes. His highlight reel is pretty insane, even if some of them are controversial. So Henry Cejudo, the gold medalist in the Olympics for wrestling, the 2-division UFC champion, would start his career winning the Olympics in 2008, winning gold at only 21 years old. That is so impressive. This honestly might be the most impressive part of his career. It depends what you hold to a higher standard. I mean, obviously, it's harder to become a UFC champion, probably, than to win a medal in the Olympics. I don't know. That's probably a debate for another day. But this dude was only 21, so I think that makes it a more impressive feat for sure. But seeing that there wasn't any money in this wrestling gig, especially in the Olympics, there's no money in the Olympics. It's ridiculous. But seeing that, he would start training for MMA, gearing up to hopefully enter the UFC and become a champion. He made his MMA debut in 2013, knocking out Michael Poe. He would then go on a 6-fight winning streak, which would be enough to earn him a UFC contract. He would win his debut by unanimous decision against Dustin Kimura, which would be his first win of 4, putting him on a 4-fight winning streak, which would prove to be enough to earn him a title shot against the reigning champion Demetrius Johnson. But this fight would not go how Henry imagined it for sure, because he would get finished in the very first round with a vicious flurry of knees to his liver, which would cause him to lose balance, fall over, and he just hugged his stomach. He had nothing. He got a few more hammer fists, and the ref stepped in, and that was it. Henry was finished in the first round, having his dreams crushed of reaching UFC gold for the time. Cejudo would then go and lose to Joseph Benavidez by split decision in one of the most fun and high-paced flyweight bouts I've seen, honestly. I mean, it was for the time, okay? Obviously, now it's not one of the best, probably, but for the time back then, this was probably the best flyweight fight of all time. It was so good. Both guys getting hurt and just super competitive. Now, honestly, I don't really agree with the scorecards at all of it, though. You had Henry getting a point taken in the first round due to 2 groin shots in a row. Now, Benavidez clearly won the third, but I thought Henry outdamaged him pretty clearly in rounds 1 and 2, and that's where it gets confusing and hard to score because it's basically all about round 1. Like, how badly was Cejudo actually beating him until that point taken away? Yeah, it's hard to say, but I think, honestly, Henry probably should have got the nod for this, winnings round 1 and 2, because, I mean, he basically won the round because of that point deduction, so. But it doesn't matter because Henry lost, and this put him on a 2-fight losing streak. This proved, though, to light a fire inside of Henry, which could not be put out, and this man wanted more than anything to have some UFC gold to put next to his Olympic gold. Henry would then KO Wilson Rice and beat Sergio Pettis by unanimous decision, which would earn him his second chance at UFC gold 2 years later against the same man, Demetrius Johnson, who is still dominating the division. What a GOAT. And this was a fight where basically 99% of the fan base, I feel like, was completely counting Henry out. It was just hard to see Demetrius lose at that time. He was on like an 11-fight win streak, basically all of them being title defenses. It was just hard to imagine this guy losing to anybody. But Henry would prove them all wrong in winning the bout by split decision, which proved to be very controversial because lots of the fan base did not think he deserved the nod. Now, I just rewatched the fight today, a couple hours ago. And yeah, it's probably the best flyweight fight of all time. It's my favorite flyweight of all time. It's so good, bro. It's so good. It's so fucking close too. It really is. It's a close fight. Hard to judge. But me personally, I do think Demetrius deserved to get the nod. I think he won rounds 1, 3, and 5. I do think it probably could have been 2-2 going into the 5th. So there's a lot of pressure on the 5th, and 5th was probably the closest round of the fight, which makes this even harder to score. But what makes it even worse is I do think there's a real argument for Demetrius winning 4-1, and him winning round 2 as well, because he outdamaged him in rounds 2. He outdamaged him the whole fight. I mean, the only rounds Henry won were the rounds he was able to take down and control Demetrius, and he only did it for like 50 seconds to a minute in that second round, and other than that, he didn't really do much. So I think you could give Demetrius 1, 2, 3, and 5, but obviously Henry clearly won round 4, controlled him for like half the round. Demetrius couldn't really do much. So controversial or not, Henry was finally the UFC champion of the world, but this was just the beginning of Henry's title run in the UFC. But Henry would have to defend, instead of moving up like he wanted to, he would have to defend his flyweight belt from the bantamweight champion in TJ Dillashaw, coming down, cutting all the way down to 125 to try to get double champ status. And we all know what happened. TJ got knocked out in the first 30 seconds. Bro, that's such a bad loss for his legacy. I forget that this shit happens sometimes. Now, this is where unfortunate circumstances really start to plague Henry's career. And yeah, basically, after this win, people just wrote it off to TJ not belonging at flyweight and not humanly being possible to fight at that low of a weight class, which they were right. The weight cut was terrible. It took away, he had 1% chin left, and all Henry had to do was tap it, and he was done. He could not fight at that weight class. But we cannot take away that he still finished one of the best bantamweights, if not the best. A lot of people say the best, in the first 30 seconds. Still such an impressive win for his legacy. And we all know what would happen next. TJ Dillashaw would pop for EPO, making that loss look even, I don't even know. That might make it look better, actually. I don't know. But basically, he was trying to take EPO to get him down to that weight class, which you can't do that. And he was banned for 2 years for it, leaving the bantamweight champion vacant. Now, I'm not sure if this was a reason that helped propel Henry to be given the opportunity to go actually move up without really any defenses. Nevertheless, Henry was given the opportunity to fight Marlon Moraes for the vacant bantamweight champion of the world, where Marlon was on a 4-fight win streak, finishing people like Aljamain Sterling, Rafael Assunção. Yeah, Marlon, it's unfortunate. Marlon's record or career is so unfortunate. This dude literally looked unbeatable in some fights, and then he just ended up losing by KO to so many people towards the end of his career, and he was never champ. It's unfortunate. Now, I personally think this is easily Henry's best performance, because not only did he finish Marlon brutally in the third round, he also had conquer much adversity in this fight, getting his legs brutally just fucked up in that first round especially. Marlon clearly won the first round, like, very dominantly. It was not a good start to the fight, and the commentary could not shut up about it. But Henry would counter this by changing his traditional karate stance that he liked to use in the UFC to a more boxing / more traditional MMA stance, which would prove to help because Henry would use this and use the clinching and outstrike Marlon, outdamage him slowly in round 2, leading to some momentum that he would use to finish Marlon Moraes in round 3. He also had this crazy flurry of knees in round 2, which I think really costed Marlon the fight, just letting them come unanswered. He just landed like 8 or 9 knees to the liver. Just all you had to do was unclinch, like push him off you, but I guess a lot easier said than done. And in round 3, when Marlon was seeming a bit gassed and damaged, Henry would finally implement the grappling, successfully getting Marlon down and just smudged him a little bit, and then he would brutally just land like 10 elbows, just hammer fists, elbows, hammer fists, which would cause the ref to stop in with only 20 seconds left in the round, I think. But very justified stoppage. Marlon wasn't doing anything. He was bleeding all over his face, and those knees or elbows were so brutal. And yeah, just like that, Henry was the double champion of the UFC. Now, to this day, I still think he's the most impressive double champ. Not as in quantity. Like, he didn't defend a belt twice, come up and defend it. He didn't do any of that, really. He defended this belt, though. He did. But he was probably the most impressive double champ just because of levels of competition and the performances he had. And I think his pick with the double belts is the most badass. It's so iconic. And this was obviously the peak of his career, easily. There wasn't really much else he can do except defend the belts and try to push himself to be one of the GOATs of either of the weight classes he was conquering, but he would not do this. He would, however, defend successfully. And I think is he the only male to do that? I think Nunes did it, but I think he's the only male to actually defend as double champ, which is insane. Such a crazy feat. And yeah, he would face Dominic Cruz, and we all know what happened. Again, a little bit of controversy, but Henry would get it done by finish. Henry would land a vicious knee up the middle while Dom was doing his dumbass head movement like he always does, where Henry would proceed to jump on him and land exactly 13 unanswered shots. 13! Okay, and people still think this was a bad stoppage. Come on. Now, many people think this was a bad stoppage because they think Dom deserved more time to recover, but in my opinion, this was not a bad stoppage, and I think this is not controversial at all. I mean, maybe like 1 more second, 2 more seconds, but like, what are people talking about? Just because Dom is moving and scrambling does not mean he's recovering, okay? He was basically out, like, just scrambling, and Henry was landing every single shot he threw. He was not missing. There was nothing coming back towards his direction. Like, this is a good finish and a very good fight for his legacy. But then Henry would make the worst mistake of his UFC career, or just career in general, and he would leave the UFC, retire that night in 2020, which many believed he would never return. And I do think he intended that night to never return. But then there was rumors in 2022 of him wanting to come back to the sport, and then in 2023 he would be booked and given the chance to come fight right for the title and challenge Aljamain Sterling, the reigning champion at the time. Now, I've heard a lot of rumors and people say that he did this in order to try to get the UFC to give him more money, did it as a negotiation tactic, like they'd want him back, like, please come back. But the real truth is he just wasn't a big star, and I don't see how that would work, get him more money. I don't. So that doesn't really make sense to me, and I don't think that is the reason he did it. I think he was just truly satisfied with his career. I mean, he was on like 3 masterclass like performances back to back to back. So I think he truly was just satisfied and intended on retiring that night, but then he just missed it. He had a family and a wife and realized, fuck, these guys spent a lot of money. I need to go make more. And obviously, we know that he failed. Aljamain beat him by decision, which many fans thought it was very clear. I mean, I thought it was clearly 3-2. It was a close fight. And I do think it would have been the best decision to just call it a career there and be like, I tried to come back and regain my greatness and get back to the top of the UFC, but he failed, and he should have just accepted that. He came back too old, and yeah, the sport had evolved without him. And I think he should just retire today. I know he's going to fight again probably, but he's already on a 2-fight losing streak. Turn that into 3, man. Like, you can't end your career on a 3-fight losing streak. It's going to fuck up your legacy. But I didn't even talk about his second loss he would get when he came back. To fight Merab Dvalishvili. Jesus, why'd you take this matchup, Henry? No, I get it. I get why he did. This is like the only way he could have got back at losing to Aljo and beating his boy. And he also probably would have got a title shot off of this win if he had beat Merab, especially by finish, which he would almost do in the first round. Almost like everybody does against Merab, fucking Mr. Chin. But yeah, Henry would catch him with a left hook, I think. I think that's the strike that Merab's always getting caught with. But yeah, he'd catch him. He didn't really, I don't even think he dropped him. He just stumbled him really bad. And yeah, he'd fail to finish him. And we all know what happened. He won the first round, but then he would get completely dominated in the next 2 rounds, getting tossed, picked up, thrown like he had never grappled a day in his life. And yeah, there really was no excuse for that to happen to Henry. It's not like Merab was the bigger guy. It's not like he was the more experienced guy. It's not like he had better accolades. Yeah, just disappointing, Henry. Disappointing. But now, I've had enough talking about that depressing shit. Losing to Merab, so depressing. But now I'm going to talk about what he should actually do, because he's going to fight again. And I've heard him talking about, like, oh, I'm going to go back down to flyweight. It's like, are you insane? Dude, stay at bantamweight. You're way too big now, especially for flyweight. No. Okay. I think he should fight Dominic Cruz. Okay? Hear me out. Dominic Cruz is not retired yet. I know many of you think he is probably because the dude hasn't fought in like 2+ years, but he's still just commentating, like acting like he's going to come back and win some fights. But, like, bro, that guy needs to retire. But it's not like he doesn't look good. It's just, why are you here still? I don't get it. But both of them, really, I could be asking that question about both of them. Why are you guys here? Retire, accept you conquered greatness. But they don't want to. So I think it's only right, especially in Dom thinking that it was an early stoppage. He clearly wants this fight, this rematch back. So let him fight fucking Dominic. That's a big legacy name win. You can get another win over him. And yeah, I think it'd be a really badass fight. They have a lot of history. They hate each other. Be a funny build-up. So yeah, do that. Yeah, man, Henry's just a little overhated. I get it. You don't like his personality, but he's a cool fighter, all right? He's fun to watch. Definitely has overrated grappling. His takedowns fucking suck, and he's never came close to subbing anybody in his life. But good defensive grappler, and he can control you if he gets you on the ground, so... And yeah, guys, that's basically it. I just wanted to kind of go over Henry's career and kind of address some of the controversies and negatives of his career I hear a lot about recently. But yeah, that's the end of the video. See you guys in the next one.